Hello and welcome to an inspirational community collaboration. This is, what are we? Witchy Wednesday. Yes, we are Witchy Wednesday, and I am sporting my favourite witchy outfit and a new witchy ring I've got. It's very witchy. Yeah. Witchy, wizardy, magical, and creative. Please like and share this film as I'm doing now. The pre-start, I'm always liking and sharing. Share to any groups you've got. Blah blah blah. This is the last week at this time. There's going to be a week break next week, and then we're going to start at 9 till 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Pacific Standard Time. Today's guests are fantastic magical beings on this wizardy witchy Wednesday. Ian Michael.
Hello, brother.
How you doing?
Excellent.
Where on earth are you?
Well, I have come into the big city of San Jose, Costa Rica. Have been living down in the jungle about 3 hours south of here on the Pacific coast. And just coming and doing some city things like getting a tattoo and drinking plant medicine.
Are you really getting a tattoo?
Yeah.
Great. What are you getting?
It's going to be an Ouroboros, like the snake that's eating its own tail, kind of life and death and transformation.
That makes sense. Makes sense, mate.
Yep.
So what's going down in Costa Rica? Last time I saw you were in California.
Yeah, I can't remember when I was last in California. I think it was maybe 6 or 7 weeks ago. Time has moved into a different kind of dimensionality for many of us, I think.
Right.
I came down here in January, and then I was returning to the Bay every 2 weeks to see my daughter. And as borders started closing in March, I was actually headed to South Africa to lead a trip to the White Lions and do a leadership retreat. And then
was that connected to the brothers Izzy and Adam, Israel?
No. Very curious.
Yeah. I'm going to connect you to Izzy. White Lions. Izzy. White Lion. Okay. Sorry. Carry on. So you were going to go to South Africa.
And the border closed. We were ready to go. I was up in Vancouver, and we were ready to go to South Africa. The border closed, and I did a quick situational analysis of where I could be of best service to the world. And being in the Bay and in lockdown did not feel like the best place for me to serve. So I came down to Costa Rica, where some friends have a farm, and I've been mapping out how we can build a resilient village down there. It's a place where, in these kind of times where food security and water and energy are less stable, there's places where the land is generous. And so I've been tuning in and getting to know the land down here in Costa Rica.
Right, because your background, you've degrees in eco resort design and development, and then you've also got degrees in masters in counseling, psychology, and community mental health, which seem to be fantastically knittable educations to have a holistic community. So
yeah, exactly. Well, we have our inner home and our outer home. Our inner home is the one that we deal with every day in ourselves and in relationship to others, and then our outer home, the infrastructure that we use to have shelter, is the other piece that I've worked on. So kind of like a holistic approach to nourishing ourselves and living in harmony with our surroundings.
What do you think is a real linchpin to having successful communities?
Well, the community mental health is probably the major linchpin. There's like 2 or 3 things that I see. One is communities that don't have the financial resources or the capital or the support to build what they want to build. That's kind of like the first threshold. If you make it past that, or you bootstrap something together, or you're well financed and you actually build something, then the next major challenge is getting the operational engine and kind of the systems and the agriculture and food and everything actually functioning harmoniously. And then the third thing, which is, I would say, the primary downfall of most communities and often retreat centers as well is the interpersonal dynamics and people willing to have enough humility to recognize that they make mistakes and that we're fallible, and then to work out those interpersonal dynamics. And just like cleaning our house, if you don't clean your house or your dishes, they start to pile up and it becomes like untenable, and you no longer have any dishes to eat with. Similarly, in a community, if you don't have a mechanism for doing some kind of emotional house cleaning and relational house cleaning, then you get these issues that kind of stack up to the point where you have like a major deconstruction of the social fabric.
Interesting. So, okay, the deconstruction of the social fabric. I liked that as a starting as a carrying on point. So, I mean, do you use any tools like astrological, personality assessment, psychometrics to see how people fit together before, or are you like Anders and going on a very sort of organic process?
Yeah, more of an organic process, more of a process based in Gestalt. I lived at Esalen for 4.5 years, and my background, when I went to CIIS, California Institute of Integral Studies, I studied community mental health and integral psychology there. Their model was very much based on the recovery model of mental health, and basically that was very much like social justice and focused on those kind of dynamics. And then when I moved to Esalen and lived there, I got an expansion of my knowledge of Gestalt processes, and then I think that Gestalt kind of merged into and became a number of different techniques. One that's called circling, but some of the basic tenets were that you have regular periodic opportunities for the community or management or people or teams to come together and to air the challenges that they're experiencing with one another in what's called a safe container, which basically means a place where you're not going to have negative consequences for truly speaking what your experience is.
Right.
And there's different techniques of communication, nonviolent communication. There's T group formats. There's a lot of different formats for how you actually run those meetings. But that's more the school that I came from, and I saw the value and benefit of it. I also saw that there was an old style of Gestalt at Esalen in the time of Fritz Perls and others that was very much like me-centric, where you could just kind of like air all your dirty laundry and project all your childhood challenges onto the collective or onto another individual. And Gestalt evolved over time to be a much more we-centered approach, where it's like there was a consciousness of the collective field, and that individuals that were speaking something maybe from an individual genesis, but it could also be that there's just intelligence for the overall collective of the group.
Right.
Yep.
So I mean, it sounds like the organic phase is the way to go for collective intelligence.
With clear structure and like accountability and consistency of that process. Yeah.
Right. So, some of the work you were doing over in California, I'll explain the basis of what your work looks like. What are you doing?
Well, I have been consulting retreat centers the last 2 years. So mostly on design, construction, and operations. And then about 2 years ago, Stan Groff and his nonprofit came to me and were interested in building a center for transpersonal psychology. And that morphed into a company called Holos. And with Holos, we produce experiences that remind people of their innate wholeness and also their interconnection with all things. And so we do that through retreats, and then we also do it through building out infrastructure and places where people can thrive.
Is that the Holos University that Norm Shealy is involved with?
No, different
Holos.
Different project. So I would love to be connected to him as well.
Yeah, I was actually going to call him up because he got mentioned yesterday by somebody, by Tiffany, by Rose Soti, who studied at the other CIHS down in San Diego, which is a a similar school to CIIS. You know, in my days, 15 years ago, when I was in England doing energy field stuff, both of those schools were always came up together as kind of like the leaders in the stuff. But yeah, Norm Shealy is amazing, and obviously a lot of background in the Gestalt type psychology.
Beautiful.
So I will. There's three people I'm connecting you to now. Anders ran off, so him, Shealy, and Norm. Cool. Okay, so what is it special about Costa Rica? Do you think Costa Rica, because it keeps coming up in my field?
Yeah. So I'll make this a little bit longer story because we've got a little time together. But I grew up in the middle of Alaska, outside of a town called Fairbanks. It's called the Golden Heart of Alaska, and my parents were more or less back to the land hippies. My mom, had a number of different little products that she made, things called Save-A Sacks, and my dad was a custom home builder and cabinet maker and a lot of different things. So very like rootsy, hands-on childhood gardening. We had pigs and goats and hunted and did all these things. So I got a flavor for what it is to live off the land and to really be connected to your community. And then as I became a teenager, I decided that I was more interested in a plant-based lifestyle. So I became a vegan when I was 17, and I realized pretty quickly that living sustainably in Alaska as a plant-based or on a plant-based diet is like pretty hard. Right. It's like a lot of work. Like we can go pick blueberries and have gardens and do a lot of canning, but I was drawn to be somewhere further south.
Right.
So when I was 18, a series of events happened that led me to hitchhike from Alaska to Mexico, and the goal was to get to Belize or Costa Rica and find a community that was land-based and that I could be, engaged in living off the land and learn that ecosystem. So hitchhiked from Alaska to Mexico, had an experience in the jungle, in the waterfalls in Mexico that led me to kind of like a state of samadhi where I dissolved into the waterfalls and the jungle and the sun, and I felt complete with my journey at that time. And then many, many years later, after a couple different iterations of my life, I felt the call to come back down to Central America and went to Costa Rica 6 years ago. And a lot of my life I've been honing in on places where there's an abundance of clean water, of arable, good, fertile soil, the presence of the five elements, or at least earth, air, fire, and water in balance in some way. So the basic constituents of life. And so that led me to Costa Rica. So for the last 6 years, I've been looking around Costa Rica, getting to know different communities, getting to know different landscapes here, and looking for what are the optimal conditions for human thriving. And very early on, I was looking, I wrote a paper in high school about population, overpopulation, and just the carrying capacity of the earth. And without major technological advances, which are happening, the human species is very much consuming more resources than the earth is producing, and so a lot of us are really aware of that. And I was looking for places where you could regionally be living in respect to the ecosystems and in balance with the ecosystems. So that scale of human thriving and civilization is what I've been looking for, and I found that all over Costa Rica. There's regions and pockets where the amount of food being produced, the waters, the different energy sources, they all can be in harmony with the local ecosystem and in respect to that. So I've landed in an area called the Diamante Valley, and during this time of the global pandemic, it's just become so acutely evident that there are ways to live in harmony with the land that are much more resilient and sustainable. And we're seeing that where there's these large population centers in the world, New York, San Francisco, places in Italy, where unless you have very tight controls on society, you have the potential for a disease or for any kind of shock to the system to have catastrophic effects.
Right.
So, what I'm looking at is what is it that builds greater resilience? And part of it is less density. It's just like in agriculture, when you have a monocrop, when you're just growing corn, when you're just growing beans, whatever it is, the opportunity for
devastation,
a shortage of water or a pest to come in and wipe it out is much higher. So it's like, how can we, in a biomimetic way, in a way that mimics other living systems, how can we thrive and live? So I see that in Costa Rica, I see it in other places, New Zealand, Canada. So I have children on the North American continent, Turtle Island, and so I'm looking for the places where myself, my children, my community, and others can really thrive in harmony with an ecosystem. So I've chosen a region in Costa Rica, and I've chosen a region in Canada where I feel like that's very doable.
Amazing. So resilience is really about diversity. Because as society, we've been moving towards these monocratic, or at least away from them, for the last 2,000 years. We've been separating people into different categories, both racially, financially, educationally. We segregate, and we do it with science as well. So do we need a real shift in the consciousness of the planet with regards to how we separate things in order to be able to live in communities that are diverse again?
Yeah, I think that it's definitely a shift in consciousness, a shift in awareness. I have a particular view on consciousness that actually everything is conscious in different forms. And then our own human awareness of our impacts. So there's, in psychology, one of the theories that I was taught is about the gap that can be between intent and impact. And that can be as simple as something that you say to someone else, and your intent may be very benevolent, but then the impact is really negative. And so similarly, human beings may have this great intent of like growth and providing for people, and then the actual impact on the rest of life is catastrophic. And so, it's like, it's honing that awareness, and like you said, like a higher consciousness of what are each of our impacts on a daily basis, on a collective basis, and we really have a long way to go in growing that level of awareness and consciousness. And one of the things I thought was really interesting is there's this larger issue that we are all facing or going to face of climate change. And the climate has changed many times over the eons, over the billions of years that Earth has been gestating and birthing life.
Yeah.
But this moment of climate change will have major effects on civilization. And during this time of COVID, when there's like major economic contraction, people are mostly at home, there's still like a huge amount of CO2 emissions that are happening. And so it's like there's the shift in consciousness, which is the first layer of awareness, and then there's the shift in actions, and then the subsequent like technologies and things, the infrastructure that needs to be built and changed, the patterns that need to be changed of the way that we habitate this planet. So I think that the shifting consciousness is certainly a piece of it, and then that ends up being reflected in the actual embodied changes of behaviors and structures.
So it's like it's almost consciousness has to change first, because I think a lot of people are waiting for like the change to be brought to them. It's like, when it all changes, then I'll adapt or something.
Right.
Is there a certain magic? I mean, we are on Witchy Wizardy Wednesday, which are very loose topics, but or themes. But the notion is, what's the sort of secret ingredient you feel to getting this? Because look, to us, it's obvious, right? It's obvious about thriving and being in balance with nature and all, but it seems like to the majority of the world it's not obvious. So what do you think are some of the key magical realizations or what would be required to awaken the rest of the population?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how magical thinking you want to get. It's like,
However much you want.
Yeah, I mean, we could take it to the level of, okay, well, it takes it takes a major shock to the attention to get people's attention right now.
Right.
So, you know, the way that our social media and our news and our systems and our technology are currently designed, they are mining our attention. Our attention is monetized, and you gain value in society as a company by capturing more attention. And so, if things are set up in that way, it will take a major force outside of that system to get enough people's attention to actually shift consciousness and behavior.
Right. And the way we're going in society and technology is that it's only going to look worse. It's only the amount of overload of data. So, I mean, what, should we just sort of shut the internet down?
Well, that would be a really interesting exercise. I have experienced being here in Costa Rica some technology challenges, like not having a phone number anymore and having to go back to the U.S. to like save my phone number from Google Fi and
maybe I should stop sending you text messages then if you're not on that number.
I'm not getting any text messages. Yeah. So there was definitely a period of time where I had no SIM card and like no Wi-Fi at the farm and a lot of different things where it was so frustrating most of the time, and then there would be these moments of clarity and appreciation for the state that I was in. But at this time of the global pandemic, everybody is becoming an Instagram and Facebook star and running programs and all these things.
People are just doing interviews every day. People are just going live streaming. I mean, just randoms, and then just interviewing their friends who have some wisdom and.
Exactly.
Okay, yeah.
Who would do something like
Who
that?
would do that? So what can we do? What can we do?
Because it's really interesting. It's something I've been an advocate for, even in like Gestalt circles or other contexts, where it's like you need to listen to the quieter voices, and then if the quieter voices are not listened to for long enough, they get louder and they come through in subversive ways. It's just like trauma in our own system. If we ignore something for too long, then it'll come back in a way that is much louder.
Right.
So similarly, like the earth is giving us signs and symbols of like, hey, this doesn't feel good. This causes more death than life. And if we dull our senses to the point where we no longer listen to the messages of the earth, then she will come back with more vengeance and more clarity in her voice. And I know that I'm personifying a force like life or Mother Earth, but for me it is an actual like dialogue with a being, with a beingness. And so
say that again, with a what?
What's that?
You say that again. It's a dialogue with what?
Yeah, it's a dialogue with an actual being or a beingness. Like we call her Gaia or Mother Earth or like life force. There's an actual animate, conscious, aware, self-referential system that is operating on Earth, and we get to listen to it or not. And my hope is that we choose to listen to it, and it's going to take some discipline. It's like I got forced into it by my technology not working, so I would go down to the waterfalls or see the hummingbird or like commune with what was happening around me, and that was really centering and felt good to my nervous system. But the discipline that it takes to say, okay, I'm not going to be on my device or engaged with technology right now, and I'm going to go plant my garden, is a stretch for some people.
Absolutely. Maybe having it this time when technology is people are so using it 20 times more, maybe to have a cut-off period, 5 p.m., that's it. No tech, no phone, no computers, no TV, or even...
There was a really sweet practice at Esalen where there was no technology during meal times, and there were people that were kind of militant about it, and like as much as people didn't like to be called out for getting on their device at a meal, they shut the internet off and they encouraged people to just be present with the meal and with each other. That was a good practice.
Yeah, definitely. With this wake up, this the Gaia, paying attention to the being, the Gaia. Would you say that there's almost an intelligence there?
Oh yeah, most definitely.
And then with that intelligence, is it what the ancient civilizations would do by worshipping nature and different aspects? Like they created a god out of the ocean, and a god of the wind, and a god of the thunder, and it's like, are we going backwards, or have we missed something in losing the story?
That's a really good question. I guess what comes to me is, are we experiencing life as sacred? And what are all the roads that we use to get there? So maybe not so dependent on the individual stories. Maybe there's an opportunity for us to recognize that we each have our own way of relating to the sacred, and not to have a monopoly on that.
Right.
So, just really allowing each of us to have our own way of being, and maybe it is that we're worshiping the wind, or the sun, or the earth, or the waters.
One of the things that I'm hot into is the etymology of things, the origins of words, and Jeffrey Armstrong is coming on, who's on Friday, who's a Vedic specialist, and Sanskrit is basically the origin of most languages on the planet. So, but aside from that, the word metaphor, I mean, he might tell me it comes from a deeper Sanskrit, but the word metaphor means to carry over from. And metaphor is like a story that we tell to describe the meaning or the heart of whatever we're passing over from. And in a way, I wonder if the deities that were worshipped were like metaphors for tuning into the fundamentals of nature.
Absolutely. And it seems like the nature of the mind to want to have something to concretize things within. So it could be a metaphor, it could be an archetype, but basically it's hitting the symbolic register of our sense-making capacity. So once you have a symbol that represents something in the outside world, then your brain can start to wire to that and can create a feedback loop of, oh yeah, I recognize that symbol. And then those symbols eventually become words, and we try to describe them through written and verbal words. But even at a more limbic level of our brain, like, symbols are powerful.
Right.
So I think that's where those original deities came from, because it's like, oh, this is the wind, and the wind is all of these potential emotions and responses, and if we can symbolize that in a god, then it's like, okay, that holds that, and we know we can start to relate to wind in that way.
Right. So I mean, it doesn't have to take away, and as you said, flexibility is so important. It doesn't have to take away. If you're a devout Christian and you worship JC, the fact that you pick up a little statue, for example, a little horn statue, and if you get a sense from this of some sort of energy incarnate in it, like, oh, it's the big welcoming mama, the hugging mama style, slightly naughty, I don't know, devil, whatever. The point is, if you can allow yourself to feel the essence of that other representation, then what do you think about that as a process of kind of gestaltly processing your emotions through animating these objects, these...
Yeah, they definitely can represent aspects of ourselves and allow us to see it from an outside perspective and look at something objectively. Um, and for myself, I am cautious about like creating an idol or like something that is too concretized. So I really appreciate a lot of the traditions, like the sand paintings in
Right.
Tibetan Buddhism, where they create this elaborate, beautiful depiction of the heavens or of a deity, or and then they wipe it all away.
Right.
You know, and so like there's something about that, you know, like what I was talking about, the Ouroboros and like the snake. It's like there's something about that process of just like allowing something to concretize into a symbol, and then also like holding it lightly, you know, and not getting like most of the world religions ended up becoming devoted to a book or an ideology, and and uh, and it's interesting that like idol and ideology have a similar genesis of the word. And so I think when we get too locked in and holding on to one idea, then that's where we lose the bigger perspective of the context of all of it, and also the mystery. And that's where like um, the early versions of many of these religions and practices were very much mystic, where it was a living experience of the mystery.
Right.
And there may have been ways to describe it in symbols or in deities, but I really feel like it was more of an embodied living experience than it was an idea.
Right. Right. And in fact, maybe you could see that as the difference between cities and nature. Is that, you know, cities are an idea of something. They're created, mental model, and built. They're not alive. The people in them are alive, but nature is completely alive. I mean, the trees and the forests. I mean, I'm here in the redwoods in, you know, San Rafael, and so it's breathing and flexible. So it's both, you know, the both is a tree over there that is a permanent structure. Every morning that tree is there. Every morning that tree, every night it's there. But it's not fixed. It's growing, it's moving. And so then, do you think this application of this need to both be fixed and to be flexible is a kind of a route that is applicable to every aspect of existence?
Oh my gosh, I really love that you took it there. It's just so beautiful to see the way that you were able to take it to the macro and holding the like city versus nature, human civilization versus the wildness, and then take it all the way into your home and and into the basic processes of life itself. Like those two things definitely exist, where it's like the opportunity for expansion and adaptation, and also the drive of a particular direction.
Right.
And it's curious that like even the DNA and the helix, it has both the flow and the structure.
I mean, it seems like society in general is a bit stuck on that masculine, patriarchal, fixed, crystallized. What is it? It is something. Is it good or evil? It must be one or the other. It's like we're really kind of invested into the solidity of duality, and I think people might be scared of the non-duality because it doesn't offer a solid entity, a solid thing of knowing, and so I think people may be scared of going crazy because like, oh well, how can I have an opinion and not hold an opinion? That means I'm schizophrenic. There's two voices in my head. Oh, what do you say to people who might say that a bit less dramatically than me?
Well, I mean, I can relate to it. I certainly have those moments of confronting the wildness in myself or in the world that that cause a response of, oh my gosh, am I going to return to some level of structure or normalcy? And so it's an interesting, like I find myself titrating my own system, my own consciousness, between that state of total disillusion and surrender and trust, and then those moments of control and focus and structure. Um, yeah, it's been interesting being here, and I'm back in the city, and it's a city in the midst of an amazing country and ecosystem, but it has much more structure and energetics like that. And then down in the jungle, it's like, even though there's a cabin and all these things, we're definitely experiencing nature in its wildness. And there will be, like a bug explosion because the rains come, and then some bugs hatch, and then the house is inundated by bugs. And not a lot of people are accustomed to that kind of a reality.
Right.
So, like, it's a little experience of like, whoa, this is way out of my control. I don't control the like 6 inches of rain that just happened, and I don't control the bugs, and I just need to find my equanimity inside of this very dynamic wild system.
Right.
And there's a part of my nature that absolutely thrives and loves that, and then there's a part of my nature that is like, holy cow, I'm like way out of my league. And it's like similarly in meditation or in
Right.
a psychedelic journey, it's like material may arise inside you that seems very overwhelming, and then it's like, okay, well, who can help me, guide me through this, or how am I going to be able to navigate this through my own system? And that's really like, I think that is part of that expansion of consciousness that you're talking about, is the recognition of like, we are both massive players in our choice making and how we construct reality around us, and we are massively incapable of controlling the universe. It's like there's so many forces around us that are much greater than ourselves.
I mean, everything's got this mathematical as above, so below. This yin and the yang, the snake eating its own tail, the infinity Mobius strip loop of the entire universe is getting compressed into itself, and I say it's sort of like burning into the magma plasma of creation and melting out of existence and then forming itself and back in the other way. The question is, with regards to this sort of surrender control aspect, do you think it's more beneficial to like practice one than the other, or to try and have them both simultaneously?
Yeah, that's the practice that I've been exploring, is holding both simultaneously. Like, if you imagine the sun, it's like holding a pretty good center, and then it's just like radically exploding and shedding light all over the solar system and the universe. So
Right.
it's like, how can we in our own system become that toroidal force,
Right.
where there's like a clear center, and then there's also an expansion and a surrender. So there's the clear center, expansion, surrender, and we don't know necessarily what is going to be transmuted through that process. Yeah, that's I think part of the art of mastery of consciousness and being human. It's like returning to some node of an individuated source of awareness, and then recognizing that there's like a whole context, a whole universe of other sentience that we need to be adapted
to. So what are you excited about this change that's happening now in society? Do you think that it's going somewhere, or do you think it's a next step of another 20 different catastrophic events that have to happen before we really wake up?
A whole thread and wave of different things emerged inside me when you said that. Like, one is there's a lot of possible scenarios of what could happen from this moment. There's Zen Koan that talks a lot about like, we shall see. It's like something that appears to be a calamity may end up being actually really beautiful.
Yeah.
Something that appears to be a real blessing may end up being a calamity. So like that's where I sit in the center of it all, like without really passing judgment on the negativity or positivity of this current situation, with a deep recognition of the great deal of suffering that's happening, with a great deal of recognition of the amount of change in the systems that's possible, with a great deal of recognition of the beauty of the stillness and of like a pause and an ability to like look around, and instead of just continuing things as they are, to have a pattern interrupt where we get a choice. The Viktor Frankl, who was in the internment camps in Germany, he wrote this book, Man's Search for Meaning, and basically what I distilled from his work is that the only real freedom we have is the choice of how we respond to any moment.
Right.
So it's like there's the we shall see, and then there's what is the subjective way that I'm going to show up, that you're going to show up in this moment. And so I'm listening to the intuition of my body, of my heart, of my spirit, and letting that direct me through these times. But on the larger scale of what is going to happen and what does this mean, I think it really means for myself that I get a chance to hone my vessel and my expression and my focus on how I can bring the most, you could call it coherence, the most beauty to my life and the life of those around me.
Yeah, I love that. It's all about the only real freedom we have is how we choose to respond. That was beautifully put. Wow, yeah. So, and by the way, did you get connected to India? You knew her before, right? You went down to the place on Saturday?
The beautiful crew down at Imaloa.
Yeah.
I didn't end up seeing them. We've been in kind of a little pod of people, and mostly in the waterfalls. And I've been having this very visceral experience where like when you have a new lover, and it's like you cannot wait to be in your beloved's arms again, or gazing in their eyes, and like, so I'm really deeply in love with this land in the Diamante Valley and the waterfalls there. So like, if I'm on too many Zoom calls, or if I like am trying to engage with a bunch of people, like I'm actually just yearning to be completely like just like loved on by these waterfalls, and just like, oh, it's so sensuous and good. So I haven't seen India on this trip. I saw her with like a couple months ago with some Colombian mamos, the Kogi that came. But right now I'm like, yeah, I'm really getting to know this land and like cultivating a pretty deep romance with the rocks and the water and the howler monkeys and yeah.
Wow, that sounds great. So what does it look like? What are some of the really exciting projects that you're involved with down there?
Yeah, there's a town called San Salvador that I have been really cultivating relationships in. Some friends have a 150-acre organic farm there with a couple cabins and some beautiful caretakers. And so I've been getting to know that region and the people there so that I can really honor the stewards that have been there and listen to the land and what it's wanting, and identifying places where we can build homes, put little tiny homes that are in harmony with the landscape, and bring more people down that want to tend land and care for each other and do healing work. And so that's what I'm most excited about, is building a home for wholeness down there in the San Salvador Diamante Valley area. And it's like the generosity of this land is so significant, like the waterfalls and the soil itself. It's like, it's all just like, oh yeah, if you give even like a little ounce of love to me, I'm just going to bless you up and take really good care of you. So that's what I'm really excited about, is like building that home base that you and others can come down and
I'm coming. I'm just going to book my flight.
Great. Oh, so yeah, no flights.
No shit.
Next month.
I have to drive. One of the things I had concerns about, because obviously we're aware of the changing climate, and the chances are it's going to get hotter and it's going to get drier where it's drier, and it's probably going to it might get wetter where it's wet, but we definitely know it's going to get drier where it's dry. And so I'm in California. I'm in the Bay Area. It's just enough water here now, but still we have dry periods and droughts and stuff. So my thinking is that I don't want to be anywhere south because of the heat. and the dryness. Now, how does Costa Rica stand in the potential raising of the global temperature and a drying out of water resources?
Yeah, there's a lot of different scenarios and projections and ways that it's been simulated. There will be an increase in temperature likely in the Central American region.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to go up very high though to get into a totally different ecosystem. So like the valley that I'm living in is at about 1,200 feet, and then behind it goes a mountain that goes all the way up to four 4,000 meters, like 12,000 feet. So there's
Mm-hmm.
like a huge spectrum of ecosystems in a pretty small region, and you can kind of choose what feels right to you. But yeah, down on the coast, it's very humid and hot, and that's one reason that I chose this region of Costa Rica, because there's other peninsulas
Mm.
that are much drier and hotter, and people like it for vacations because they don't have the peskiness of rain.
Right.
But then when you look at it in terms of like a 500-year plan, it's like, where do my children's children or my friends' children
Right.
go
Right.
to really be thriving? And we may be, we may be reaching carrying capacity without like a major technological leap. We may be, we've probably reached the carrying capacity of the Earth for the number of humans. As we get into new techniques of growing food and regenerative agriculture and new technologies for how we produce energy, there's real potential for like sustaining this number of humans, but
Mm.
we're still in a very much a growth curve, and so these large centers of commerce and humans, if they don't have food supply regionally, and something like this pandemic happens, you have major food systems that are collapsing
Right.
because you know the infrastructure isn't running anymore to keep the machine going. So that's why I'm looking more regionally, and also looking at the climate change scenarios. So the other area I've been looking at is interior BC, and yeah, there's different maps of like how much hotter is it going to get? Will that cause major forest fires? And there are simulations of all of this, and then there's also like there's the butterfly effect, and
Right.
we don't actually know. Our
Right.
best guesses are that, for myself, that these regions feel like intact ecosystems, ideal conditions for human thriving in the next 100 years, um,
Mm.
and then there's the I don't know.
Right. So again, it seems to be that application of the solid crystalline aspect, the facts, the figures, the projections, the models, and then there's the sort of non-solid, intuitive sensing and openness to the communication with the rest of the divine,
Yeah,
Gaia.
exactly.
So okay, it's very exciting. I'm excited to learn more about the different projects you've got going on. What are some of the models that are being looked at, like ownership wise? Is there an overlord and then there's sort of benevolent overlord, like it seems to be the most of the community models are these days, or have you come up with something else?
Yeah, it's been gestating inside me about what's possible, and I also feel like it's coming through a lot of other people. And there have been models experimented with over the years, all the way from like a very more tribal approach, which is you bring something in and it gets shared
Right.
more or less equally, and we each have our different skills and everything we bring to the table. Um, and then more formalized into things like collectives or cooperatives. And I think that those are becoming in vogue again.
Mm.
Um, and for myself, I feel like there's a lot of people that aren't ready to transition into that. I've been really contemplating this, like who would be ready to build enough trust among, let's say, 5 families where we all just pool all the resources we have,
Right.
all the income that we have, and we make sure that everyone's taken care of. I don't know that we've reached that level of like surrender and
Yeah.
consciousness to see that like that the collective is stronger than the individual. And so the way that I'm relating to it right now and structuring projects is where there's an ownership in the collective, and then there's also like sovereignty in your own space.
Right.
So I lived at Esalen, and the staff housing and the guest housing are all owned by the nonprofit. And more or less, the executive director and the board make the decisions on how those resources are allocated and used. And then there's like decision making processes below that. But still a very top down approach. And one thing that I experienced was that people want to have a sense of security in themselves and their own little hut.
Right.
So the way that I'm structuring things down here is either connecting communities or individuals to pieces of land that are contiguous or next to the main farm and center.
Right.
So people can have ownership in the farm and center collectively, and then have their own little pod, their own little home.
Right.
And I'm finding a lot of like interest in that model, where there's some people that have created enough cohesion in their little group of people where they have like 3 to 5 homes that they're going to do on that lawn, on that land.
Right.
Some people want their individual hut, but everybody does want to contribute to something meaningful that is collective. So you need a strong attractor field for that, and one, it could be a farm, could be like a common endeavor you're doing. What we're doing in the Diamante Valley is a holistic healing center, and part of the attractor field is these really powerful waterfalls. So that's the way that I'm relating to the ownership structure right now. Once that gets humming, once there's enough aggregate support for it and people living there, then you have all kinds of opportunities to bring people in that are volunteering or that like are given a room or a bed in exchange for their services, and you make sure that they're cared for and that they have health care and all of these pieces. So, you know, this is an ideal condition for all of that because the cost of living is low enough. It's a little harder to run a model like that in the Bay unless you have a huge infusion of capital.
Absolutely, yeah. And so then, I mean, that again model seems to be harnessing that crystalline nature and the flexibility of, you know, the crystalline nature is you've got your core group, you've got your core beings, and then around it come the flexibility of the people visiting. You've got your core area, your specific place, and then around it's the flexibility of the community. So it seems like this harnessing of opposites really has a coherence to it, a fundamental nature to it, which other models don't seem to embrace. So what about the laws of the land in Costa Rica? How much, you know, because there are certain countries where foreigners can't own land, and what about the government stability and stuff like that? People really thinking about Costa Rica. Not only are the concerns come to mind the bugs, which I do want to talk about, like, you know, is there tons of mosquitoes there? Is it just mosquito world? Do you have to sleep under a mosquito net?
I haven't had any mosquito issues. People do sleep under nets. There was a permaculturist that told me recently that like you'll be able to tell the health of an ecosystem by looking at the bugs, and if you have many different sizes of bugs, then it means that you have a healthy ecosystem. You know, it's like one marker, at least down here.
Diversity.
And I can tell you, man, there are bugs everywhere from like the size of the tip of a pin needle to like, you know, there was this one grasshopper, like a good 6-incher, that was jumping around the house and flying, and I was trying to catch him with a like blender thing.
You were trying to blend up a grasshopper, Ian Michael. That is disgraceful.
Well, I just grabbed the blender thing, and I didn't think it would hurt him.
Thought you were a vegetarian.
He was not so impressed.
Right.
He flew off the window straight into my face, and like they have grippers. So anyway, it's been an adventure down here. So yes, there are bugs, and that may be one of the more challenging things, at least in the jungle. It's not so much up here in the city, but from a social standpoint, a place like Costa Rica or Canada, while there's a threshold to getting people in the country and to residency, which is reasonable. The actual like functioning of society is for me more stable than most, and certainly more stable than the projections I see of what's happening in the U.S. Or any other Central American country. So, you know, sometimes they call it the Switzerland of Central America. There's no army because there's a number of treaties that protect Costa Rica. There's no major oil issues because they're on 99.9% renewable energy. There's a great healthcare system, a great school system.
But are you included in that healthcare system as a foreigner? I mean, what's
As
the
a
visa?
resident, yeah.
So you're a resident?
I'm not yet a resident, and I'm just like one small step away. So
Okay.
there's a couple routes to residency. You can either own a business, you can invest here, or you can work.
Okay, so it's not too difficult, and then you can own property and
Yes, correct.
land.
Yep.
Because I always remember the fear factors from Thailand, where it's like you can't own land as a foreigner, so you
Yep.
always have to partner with a local who in Thailand they're all gangsters, and especially
Yep.
on the islands. So
And that's where that mindset piece, like we're still very much not even necessarily needing to relate to it as ownership. It's more like a base sense of security. Like, can I continue to call this home, and feel safe and secure? And so that's, I feel like, yeah, you can own land here, you can own homes. It's pretty straightforward. There's a process. You get a lawyer and you do it. And
right,
I'm purchasing a little house for myself. Yeah, that I'll probably start living in next month.
great. So if people want to get involved with communities and they want to start to talk, they want to start this process of making the move to maybe a community that where they have their own independent house and yet they're attached in the next field to a shared space where they grow crops and have meeting houses and saunas and whatever else. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
where should they start?
I can connect people to a number of different communities that are doing that. And you can start on just researching on the internet. Um, there's New Mundo, which has like lots of different
Right.
opportunities in Central America. But our project is diamantevida.com, and because it's in the Diamante Valley, anybody's welcome to contact me. I have an email, ian.michael.hebert, Hebert.
That's how you say your last name.
Yeah, Hebert. Yeah,
Eh,
so
Bear. I always called it Ian Michael, so I never had to say your last name.
yeah, yeah, we were French settlers in Quebec, like around the time of Jacques Cartier, like beginning, and so
Ooh
there's
la
like
la.
definitely some like ancestral healing too, and just like how I
Right.
relate to land, how I relate to the local people, and that's why I'm doing this really slowly, and it's like really get to know the neighbors, get to know the history of the land, the Mamos, the Kogi elders that came from Colombia and were looking at Costa Rica and like different lands here and blessing them, they said that it's always really important to ask permission from the grandfather and the grandmother of the land before you do anything. And
Mm.
that may be a human being, and that may be a spirit, that may be a rock. So I've been, like in that constant dialogue. We've
Yeah.
brought elders from the mountains, of the local tribes, the Bree and just like, okay, like, are we in right relationship with everything
Right.
that's
Right.
happening here?
Asking permission is such an interesting thing that I've been, looking into and practicing a lot more. Even asking permission from I've been constructing these like temple areas in the house. Basically they're shrines, but they're not shrines. They're spaces, whatever. But to put something with something else and this, it's like each time you can sit and breathe and ask the question: does this belong here? Uh,
Yeah.
do I belong here? Do I feel? Even questions about yourself and your location within space and time. The the curiosity seems to be powerful.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that framing.
What is it about the innocence? And we're coming to the end, but I did want to just get this.
Yeah.
What is it about that sitting in the sort of innocence of not knowing? Because in society we're so told like you should know, be quick and answer quickly and be confident and fake it till you make it and stuff like that. So what
Yeah.
is the actual power in being curiously unknowing, humbly unknowing?
Hmm. Yeah, I love that. I mean, you've woven so many times this thread of being clear and directive, and then also the surrender. And I really love that that's been a
Mm.
central theme of our
Yeah.
conversation, and just the humility. there's humility in both. There's a humility in the opening,
Right.
and there's a humility in like, okay, this is the step that I know how to take right now,
Right.
and you're stepping into the unknown. And that's really like we have these ideas and constructs of what our lives are and what we're doing, and then the actual reality is like we don't really know, and there's a great mystery that we're all a part of, and so that humility of like each step, it's like chop wood, carry water,
Right.
like what level of care and attention and love are we bringing to each moment, and that's really service, like your shirt says, love to serve, you know. It's like how do you touch the world, and then and then how does the world touch you back?
I love that, having the humility, even in the times you know that you know what you need to do. Like, okay, I'm an expert in this. I've been doing it 50 years. I know what I need to do. Great. Be humble about it. Like, be humbly knowing you know what needs to do, and holding humility almost creates this third observer point to the specific and the flexible. It almost creates this third triad, and that this trinity has come up time and time again in these conversations. I've done about 40 interviews now, but it keeps coming up, this trinity, and it seems yet again that's coming up here as where real magic occurs, is when you can hold two opposite notions at the same time, or ways of being, and be the third, which is this combination of the two opposites.
There's a quote from Rumi, to paraphrase, and it says, "There is a clear bead at the center. There is no edges to my loving now." And like, as soon as there's that third, there's you, me, and then there's the clarity between us. And then once that is clear, then the unfolding of love is just effortless.
Ian Michael Hebert, thank you so much. Thank you so much for coming on. It's been such a pleasure having you on. Good work over in Costa Rica. Maybe you can post some things under the video, under the live stream, and share the video so people can see. But post some stuff about you and the projects you're working on, some links. That would be great. And I look forward to coming down.
Yes.
I am ever growingly excited to come to Costa Rica and see what's going on there.
Beautiful, brother. Thank you. Pura vida.
Thank you, brother. Thank you. So I'll just close out here. Oh, God, what a show. Thank you to my guests, Anders from Heartland, who Ian Michael needs to connect in with, but he ran off too soon. And then Ian Michael Hebert down in Costa Rica, wonderful community builders for harnessing the magic of what is present. And it seems like we have all the keys we need, and what is most important is the trust. Not trust in some other being or some other thing, but trust inside yourself that you both have skill sets and fixed aspects of self that you can use, and at the same time this humble surrender. Both are humble, but the surrender to the flexibility of what is to come. Holding both of those notions, those approaches humbly, allows us to sit inside the witness space. And with our breath, that is where we tune into what is harmonically coherent with the world, with our environment, with our family, with our lives, with the trees, the beautiful redwoods. Yes, wow. Okay, I have a book Evolve. Check it out, bookevolve.com. To me, Markabadi, I will see you all tomorrow. Please like, share this video. I know they're long interviews, but you know what? They're deep dives into the wisdom that comes out when we really sit in humble witnessing. Thank you again to my guest, Ian Michael. Much love, brothers. And to Anders, thank you so much.